Resolving conflict, whether in your personal life or in your work life, is one of the most challenging and uncomfortable things. So today we're going to talk about 5 tips to help create a framework for you to resolve any conflict. Hey, Matt here with the Leadership Perspective, and if you're interested in leadership and personal development tips and strategies just like this one, and you're new, consider subscribing. For myself, handling conflict is something that I've struggled with a lot. In most of my life, I've avoided conflict like the plague. I always was worried what people would think and how I might affect other people. But what I realized is that no matter what in your life, you're going to have conflict. It's really unavoidable. And so a lot of practice and a lot of research, I've figured out a good pathway for myself to handle conflict. And so today, we're going to have the 5 tips that I find most useful to effectively handle conflict, to really make sure that the outcome you get is really what you're looking for. So let's hop right into it. Tip number 1, make sure you identify the root of the problem. Sometimes there's more to an issue than what you see on the surface level. So make sure you do your homework and really start to ask yourself, what is the real issue that I'm having? Also, make sure you know why it is an issue. Figure out what is happening because of what's going on or what the person is doing. And then lastly, make sure you have an outcome so that you have something to shoot for once you're in that conversation with that person. Tip number 2, make sure you create a safe environment. There's 3 things I like to do in order to make a safe environment. The first one is to minimize distractions. So make sure you turn off your cell phone notifications, or if you're in an office, make sure you let somebody know that you don't want any phone calls or people walking in at that moment. The second thing is to make sure there's not multiple people in the room unless you need to. Having many people in the room at one time can cause the person to feel really defensive, and that won't result in the outcome you're looking for. And lastly, it's really important to set up some ground rules. One of the ground rules that I like to set up most often is making sure you stick to this one particular issue. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole, so make sure you focus on one issue at a time. Tip number 3, it's time to deliver the news. The first step is how you're going to deliver it. Now, there's always the sandwich method where you give something positive, then you talk about the constructive criticism, and then you go back to something positive, which I definitely recommend doing. It definitely can help. But some other things you really want to focus on is making sure you focus on their behaviors, not how they're thinking. Focusing on behaviors are things that they can change immediately, which will result in a better outcome. The next part is make sure we listen attentively. Now, the nonverbal communication is important, making sure we have eye contact, but what's really important is that we're actually listening to what they have to say. Sometimes when we're listening, we start thinking about what we're going to say next, and that's not being fully attentive to them. Something you can do is, if you don't understand what they're saying or you need a little bit more information, ask questions to fill in the gap so that you have a full context so that you can really empathize with where they're coming from. The next part is to make sure you validate their opinion, right? Once you've really listened to what they've had to say, return the information back to them. Explain to them that you really understood and feel why they did what they did. This will help them feel heard. And if they feel heard, they're more likely to come up with a resolution that you're really looking for. The last part is to resolve the issue. Make sure we start off with some common ground that you can work with. What's the outcome for this particular conflict, and what's the outcome that we're looking for in the future? We want to make sure we have a win-win situation so that both people walk away from this conversation feeling great about it. That helps to build the trust that we're really looking for. Next, we want to be okay with compromise. Especially in personal relationships, but also in business ones, compromise is really how you'll come up with a win-win situation for both people. So make sure you're okay with that going in ahead of time. Tip number 4, stay cool under pressure. The first thing is to be okay with pauses. Now, they can feel really, really awkward, but having that pause gives you a little bit of time to start thinking about what you really want to say. Also, if the emotions are running really high, it helps to bring it back down to a manageable level in the conversation. Also, you're going to want to try to zoom out of the conversation and look at it from a third-person perspective. This is especially useful when listening to the other person's side. Start to critique, hey, is what they're saying making sense in this third-person perspective? It will really help to detach your emotions from that conversation, making the conversation go a little bit better and for you to empathize with them a little bit more. Tip 5 is to forgive. Nelson Mandela says, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it kills your enemies. Forgiveness is really important because if we resolve the issue and we don't forgive, that can lead towards passive-aggressive behavior, which will really muddle our relationship as a whole. What we're really looking for is building that rapport so we have a safe and open environment so we have the most transparent communication possible. Remember, conflict is unavoidable in life, especially if you're looking to be a leader. In fact, conflict resolution is one of the core leadership skills. So if you haven't already checked out my video on leadership skill development, go ahead and click the link down below. Thanks so much for checking out this video. And for more content like this, definitely subscribe and give the video a thumbs up if you got value from it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.